Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me. If you could just introduce yourselves and let everybody know who you are.
All right, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Tim. I have a 2-year-old, and that's it. And I work as a doctor in the NHS. So thank you for having me.
Thanks. Jonny?
Hi, I'm Rich. I am a software developer by career. I have 1 2-year-old and a wife who's heavily pregnant with another one on its way in the next couple of months.
That's me, if anybody wonders, that is me. And Jonny?
Yep, I'm Jonny. I'm a surveyor. I've got a 2-year-old and my wife is also pregnant. 24 weeks now, 23 weeks.
22 points.
Around there.
Not that I know this, Jonny, but...
Okay.
I think anywhere within a month is okay by my reckoning, to be honest, as a man. Really.
I had to work it out, but yeah, okay.
This is the first bit about fatherhood that you're going to share.
Exactly.
You've really kindly come on here because you said basically what we've had is we've heard from quite a lot of women and their partners, and they've said that there isn't really that much out there at the moment for partners in terms of sort of information, and especially kind of getting the sort of blokes, I suppose, take on pregnancy. And I thought, as you three are veterans of this entire experience, and some of you are current as well because you're going through it with your wives, you could maybe help to share your experiences and things like that. So I suppose what I wanted to know was, how did you find the best ways of supporting your partners in early pregnancy and later pregnancy?
Who would you like to go first?
Yeah, who's going to start this one?
This better, shouldn't I? I'm very new to this.
Jonny, why don't you start? What are your opinions?
Well, I think the second pregnancy is very different in that you're a lot less stressed maybe that's just me. The first one, I think it's good to talk about it a lot. Talking helps. I think from a man's perspective, it doesn't really feel that real until you get quite close to the event. Maybe that's just me.
I'll be honest with you, it didn't feel real to me until it had arrived and there was an actual baby there on my chest. It all felt like it was happening to someone else until that point, which is a bit crazy, I guess. Yeah,
no, I'd agree with that. And and I think NCT definitely helped though, just to focus the mind a bit.
So you found, because obviously we have other antenatal providers out there other than NCT, but you found going to antenatal classes were helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't have a clue about anything, if I'm completely honest. And
you have, I don't have one now. I don't know. It's
well, okay, a bit more of a clue. I think it just normalizes it as well when you're around people that are in the same situation, and it's quite important to do that, I think. And actually having a support group, probably more important for the mum, but it's quite good for dad as well sometimes, just to have a chat. We didn't do it that much, if we're honest, but knowing you could is always useful.
Yeah.
That's quite true. So what? How did you find the best way? I mean, I obviously, think that I was fantastic when I was pregnant. So Rich, you really didn't have to do very much supporting at all, did you? But in what ways did you find were the best ways to support?
A lot of I found with the pregnancies, it's basically just reassurance quite a lot of the time. You find that your partner is nervous about lots of things, and a lot of that is giving her the confidence to tell you that she's unhappy about something and wants to go and look into it. For instance, there are a lot of services out there that you can ring up and get some advice over the phone. And I certainly know that during the first pregnancy, I had a bit of a kind of I didn't want to bother people very much. And I wanted it to be kind of oh, don't bother them because we don't need to bother them. But I think certainly as the pregnancy progressed, it was better to ring someone up and get the reassurance from a professional rather than saying, don't bother them, let's not worry about it, sort of thing. And I think that's one of the things I kind of learned through the first pregnancy was actually, if your wife is uncomfortable and unhappy, try and support her, but also realize that you're not an expert, and actually supporting her in going out to seek help and not trying to belittle her worries is actually kind of really important. And I know with our progress to pregnancies that we'd had quite a few miscarriages before we got them to stick. So quite a lot of the first pregnancy, there's an element of, is it going to go wrong? You know, and a lot of there were some very good things done by the NHS at that point. So we got reassurance scans that were sorted through it, which helped, and then having the freedom just to say, actually, you know what, if you're not comfortable and you're not happy, I'm not an expert. I can't tell you what to do. Why don't you ring up the expert? And even if it's really late at night and it's sodding annoying, let's go and jump in the car and go down to MEU and get things checked over and things like that. And I think being flexible enough to give that support, I think, is important.
Cool. What about you, Tim? How did you find supporting Laura through pregnancy?
The early pregnancy bit, or the whole kind of thing?
Both, really.
I think, I mean, the early pregnancy was...
It was easy to carry at the start, but got very heavy towards the end, yeah?
That's yeah, the support is heavier, that's true. Yeah, it's...
Dad joke.
Thank you.
We're not sure we should be doing this on this. I'm not sure we should be doing that. Oh, anyway. Yeah, no, it changes kind of as you go through the pregnancy. So I think at the start, it was very much... particularly in the early phase, before you've told a lot of people, actually we ended up having to tell people really early because we'd had lots of exciting trips around the world going on, and it was the whole Zika virus disaster. So we had to cancel everything. So we had to tell quite a lot of people quite early, but there was still, in the early phase, particularly when she looked fine from the outside in terms of she was not obviously pregnant. She was still kind of doing all the things she would normally be doing. And actually, the fact that she was feeling so rubbish at that point, I think actually giving her a chance to have a chat and have a moan about all of that in the early phase was really, really important. So that was the kind of key thing in the early kind of phases. And I think then as it became more real, as you talk about it later, you transition a lot more into what you then talking about in the second point, which is that actually you start getting lots of little kind of freakouts and bits and pieces with it, and actually and at that point it is very much taking her kind of seriously, and as you say, giving my partner the confidence to seek help when she was worried about things. You know, it would be like our third trip up to MOU in a week because she hadn't felt movements as much as normal, or she had a little bit of chest pain, and you get these sort of funny niggling symptoms that actually externally, and actually as a medic you would ignore most of the time, but actually it can totally and utterly take over someone's life, and actually trying to be responsive to those and be helpful is important and really hard. My wife had itchy toes, which is a thing. It's a thing of pregnancy, but it's a complete and utter. And you normally, if I heard someone on the ward say they had itchy toes, while I would love to be a compassionate and caring doctor, I probably don't know what's going on, and therefore I probably wouldn't do anything and hope it would go away on its own. In pregnancy, it was an absolute nightmare. It was keeping her up for nights and nights on end, and actually you have to kind of give a lot of emotional support for those kind of symptoms and the worry and all that sort of stuff as it moves on. But it's just a sort of changing thing that goes through. But yeah, and actually, the more you think about it, there is actually quite a lot that dads end up having to do.
Not just scratching feet, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of weird.
Did you actually itch them, or?
This is what I want to know. Did you used to scratch your feet at night to help? Did you ever do that?
She could mostly scratch her feet until she was really big, and then I could help. But yeah, there's actually little bits and pieces you do that you kind of, I don't know, it's very weird. It's very easy to, as a dad, just shut down and assume you don't really do anything and not like that involved, whereas actually there's all these funny little bits and pieces where you are involved and you are quite important. So yeah, it's a changeable thing. And I ramble, so I'm going to let you stop me there, Claire, or I'm going to stop myself and just finish.
I suppose that was something that we were quite keen to look into, because I know sort of, especially when you kind of hear from a lot of partners and men, they often don't feel that they aren't necessarily part of the pregnancy. Like, how would you say is the best way for partners to become part of of the pregnancy? How can they kind of involve themselves more, would you say?
Well, jokingly, I ate loads of chocolate and I put on loads of weight, so that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I involved in the comfort eating all the way. If Claire was going to sit down and eat a whole bag of crisps, I was going to be there at the side of her giving a bloody good hand. So I think that's perfectly acceptable.
You should definitely do all the scans and stuff, shouldn't you?
Yeah, the scans are good. The scans help. I think when there are physical signs of the baby outside the body, when you can see the bump start showing and the kicks and the bumps and all that, so you can put your hand on the belly and, feel them kick and feel them hiccup, that kind of gives you more of a feel of the reality of the sort of thing.
Weirdly, I found it was much more when I got involved. I did more stuff in the prep that kind of got me involved, like actually decorating the nursery and getting all the stuff and going and buying all the gear and getting involved with all of that kind of made it feel a lot more real.
You got involved with buying the gear?
Turn out your old man cave room and turn it into a nursery and say goodbye to all these very, video games and all the rest of it for probably forever. It was that. Sort of
yeah, my PC is still mothballed somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Jonny,
so it was that kind of helped me.
Jonny, what would you say helped you?
I think mine was the opposite, stopping Kate from buying lots of stuff for the baby. Sort of
trying to rein in the
enthusiasm.
madness, as he was.
Yeah.
Being
the responsible one. That was my way of getting involved.
I mean, that's a really good point, because that is a way I would have to say, sort of on the female side of things, and I'm not speaking for women here, but actually the buying things was a really big part of getting ready. It was sort of getting excited. I can remember that Rich used to sort of be like, oh my God, what have you bought now? And even with this pregnancy, he's still going, why have you picked that up? Why have you got that on the I've got this great hand-me-on group in Abingdon. It's like, why have you got that? And I'm like, well, I might need it. And he's like, we do not have space. But it's sort of part of that kind of almost like pre-nesting. So, speaking up for women, the buying stuff I can see why you need the voice of practicality when, you've bought your 98th baby grow. But, that can be...
I really enjoyed buying stuff, particularly at the NCT sales. You just go around and grab everything you could. It was really exciting. And then you bought cake at the end. They were like the best days out.
Yeah, but then that's buying it on the cheap, which is great. I don't mind that buying on the cheap. I'm all for buying stuff on the cheap. And also, not necessarily collecting stuff that you're just never sure you're going to use. Like I don't know about you guys, but my house is full of so much child-related stuff now that it's slightly busting at the seams. So the very thought of putting more child-related stuff in there, so the seams do physically bust, slightly horrifies me. But there you go.
So very, very quickly, were there any books or resources other than antenatal classes that you guys would recommend anyone could read? Any part?
Man versus toddler. Oh no, man versus baby. Sorry, I've read the man versus toddler one since.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just to make it funny and real at the same time is brilliant. And it helps when you first have them as well, because it just makes you laugh. Those first few weeks, so it is pretty tough and you just need a laugh. And it's just actually, that really helped.
I actually think I started a couple of books and I didn't finish them, and that really annoyed Kate.
Yeah, I did something similar.
Finish the books.
Yeah, possibly finish the books. But I think I read the Book's Guide to Pregnancy, and I got to about the end of the first trimester, about the time that Artemis arrived. So, with just other things I wanted to do, other things I wanted to read. I knew that at some point in the future that there was going to be a lot of intense child stuff that I was going to have to do. And a bit of me thought
yeah, I've gone to the birth, right?
You've both
it's going to happen afterwards, and I'm going to have to deal with it, right?
You both answered really seriously. I feel really bad for just reading Man versus Baby and watching Look Who's Talking. That was my prep.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Free Man and Little Baby.
We watched lots of people with kids films. I'm sure we watched a whole bunch of stuff before the baby arrived, like pregnancy films and things like that. So yeah, that's part of it. But you've got to enjoy it as well. It is an adventure, right? You are doing something you've never done before.
Yeah,
that's true.
That is a really nice way of getting involved, actually. I did find that really nice, especially when Richard. So this, what I found quite different actually with the second pregnancy over the first pregnancy is that I very much took, so we're going to move on to birth now and that fun time. So I very much sort of, I suppose, not took control of the birth, but, you know, I kind of did the birth plan, showed it to Rich and said, I think this is what we should do. And Rich went, yeah, sure. And this one, I'm like, right, you're going to be taking an active part in this, because I have sort of realised actually, you know, it can be something that you can sort of do together, even though you're doing the main thing. I think I took it all on myself for the first birth. So for this pregnancy, for example, I'm going to make Rich sit down and watch Spinning Babies video on how you can speed up and slow down labour, and hopefully he'll be taking notes. Sorry, Rich. But how did you guys find?
We knew some of these things about how to speed up and slow down labour and things you can do when you go into early labour. We then just threw all that advice out of the window when the labour started and jumped in a car and went to the hospital. So I don't think there's that much. And I think when it comes to how you produce a baby, right, the man is there to support you, but it is your body, and it is going to be to a certain extent. All right, so the birth partner is there to support you.
Who will not have a male partner, so we will say partner.
Okay. Whoever is there to support you and whoever is involved in the process, at the end of the day, it is your body, and there is an element of consent and the decision that you're going to do. I'm not going to make decisions for how you're going to birth. I'm not going to turn around and say, I disagree with the methods you want to use. I think to a certain extent, I'm happy to discuss it with you and help you come to your conclusions, but it's not going to be me that dictates what you do with your birthing process. Okay. And with the first pregnancy, you were very, very sure on what you wanted. And in every step of that way, I went, you're sure on what you want. I don't feel like I need to question this. I questioned what you wanted, every step of it. And although you may feel that you made all the decisions yourself, we talked about it in great detail.
You did, that's true. I mean, Tim and Jonny, did you guys talk to Laura and Kate sort of and discuss birth plans before you had the kids?
I mean, Kate was like, I'm going to a hospital and being near all the doctors, and if I need drugs, I'm going to take them. I was like, yep. I'm going to stand behind you and just whatever.
Hold your hand.
I'd say I was pretty passive.
Laura kind of refused to have much of a chat with me about it because I was always a bit over medicalising it, but that's just my background. So it was a bit sort of, you know, she'd tell me about whatever exciting thing that she'd heard about, and I was always sort of then telling it, and then I'd share my stories of labour, and I did my elective out in a maternity hospital in Latin America, so that was a bit of a different world, and it was actually, yeah, no, she just generally told me to shut up after a while. I mean, there is a huge amount you have to do as a guy, don't get me wrong, and the old, you know, the old adage of, you know, well, you'll traditionally actually as a guy on a labour ward, you'll be kind of shuttled off, and you know, the midwives will just think you're going to be totally useless, and they're worried about you fainting in a corner, and actually there is a point that actually being an advocate and also being the person who's going to do all the kind of, you know, the bits and pieces of massage, all the bits and pieces that help. If you look at the countries where they've got very good birth sort of, you know, very good kind of birth outcomes, guys are actually quite often involved. There's a lot of stuff they actually do. There's a lot of things they can help to make the whole situation a lot more comfortable. And you are a much better advocate in the kind of, you know, in the kind of worrying bits of it. You know, it is important to know the plan and what your wife or what your partner wants, going the right way, because, you know, if things will happen very quickly, and they may not be in a situation where they can make any form of rational judgment. So actually, it is really important you do know and have it. Yeah, I totally agree with Rich on one side, which is actually, it really is, you know, you've got to respect the fact it's your partner's body and they've got their choice, and you're not going to run over that. But it is important you're involved so you know enough how to be a good advocate for them and to do all the other bits which are really useful.
Yeah, actually standing up for them in the hospital, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, definitely.
But as I say, I was not allowed to talk a huge amount about labour to my wife outside from actually giving things, because I just I've got too many medical stories of it, which is not helpful.
Did you guys-
Yeah, I think I was more traditional, man. Stick my head in the sand, hope for the best,
which is
hold
fair.
a hand.
It's a different way of doing things, and it depends what your partner requests or requires from you. I mean, being there, being willing to discuss it and all the rest of it is great, and having a good understanding of what your partner needs. But if your partner actually turns around and says, actually, you know what, I don't want you involved in this. This is what I want to do, but actually I've made my decision. That's also something you've got to respect.
So did any of you three have to do any sort of major kind of advocating for, I mean, you know, Rich, I can't remember much of it because I was on quite a lot of drugs by the end of it, but did you have to do much sort of advocating at the end, toward the end, you know, during the labours? No.
I think we wanted to leave quite quickly after the birth, and actually we were like, we want to go. So I was like, come on, doctor, we need to go now. We want to go home, and that was probably a big mistake. I think we were just relieved it was all over, but it wasn't really over. If that makes sense. So my regret was not spending the night in the hospital. But then we had no way of knowing that that would have been a mistake.
Why did you feel it was a mistake?
Just have a time to ourselves and just to wind down and be on our own with the baby with some professionals around. I think because my wife's medical as well, we thought we knew everything. And actually, it's quite a different experience. So it would have been good just to stay with a midwife who would have said, this is how you do this. This is, I don't know. I think it's easy to say with hindsight, but, you know, obviously family want to see the baby as well. And yeah, we should have just stayed another night, been a bit more awake. And yeah, I think so next time we know, we'll give ourselves that 24 hours of breathing room, and then we'll reconnect with the world. That was just a personal thing.
I mean, in terms of my advocacy and also bits and pieces post the labour that were important that we had to do. I mean, in the labour, things like pushing for an epidural, because originally it was not in my wife's birth plan. And she changed her mind in the middle of it, actually, and had discussions with her in the middle of it. And actually convincing the nurses that actually it was an important thing to get it, to get it done, like expedited. I had to kind of be involved a lot with that because they kept on going, well, no, you're doing really well, you keep going. And you sit there going, actually, I know her, she's had enough. She's had enough at this point. We do really want to get the epidural, and we did push for it. And she did get an epidural, which actually made a huge difference after that. And she actually got some rest for the first time after being induced. The other thing we had, which again was really important actually for me to be a bit more alert of. So Izzy was born with a slightly high lactate, which basically means that her blood, she had a little bit of a sign of being a little bit oxygen deprived when she was born. And at the time, there were a lot of people around. There were pediatricians around. There was checks on the neonatal unit, all this kind of stuff. And actually, I think post labour, Laura was. Laura's very, I'm giving all the names now. My wife was very tearful and there was a lot of stuff going on. And so I think it was really useful to be someone who could kind of have a somewhat, you can't never have a properly calm conversation in that context, but it was good to be somebody who was not as shattered, not as emotionally completely destroyed, to be able to do that kind of stuff. And so I was kind of a good port of call for doing that and taking Izzy to her blood test and all that stuff on the ward and taking Izzy to checks in the first day, because it was all quite intense. And I think, it was again another kind of important role for dads is actually a lot of the after support, because your partner is just going to be knackered and going to have this new terrifying thing that's going to be virtually attached to them, and you think actually anything that you can do to help them, anything you can do to reduce some of that fear is very useful.
I find buying lots and lots of food from Marks and Spencer's in the hospital, chocolates, hot chocolate was very good. crisps, lots of things like that really helps
Well,
shortly after the pregnancy.
don't forget, you know, if we're talking to any people out here, any partners out here who are going to be giving birth in, you know, the next couple of weeks or months, they might not have that option. So pack food, pack snacks, pack things that your partner can have. I think that's really important to say, because of course our experience of labour, it is going to be very, very different to a lot of people's current experience of labour. Well, you know, for example, Jonny said, you know, they would have liked to have stayed in for 24 hours, but a lot of people won't have that option. But then they will be self-isolating when they get home, so they will have that time. So,
I mean, I think a lot of the hospital sort of canteens and stuff, at least where I'm working, there is still some functioning stuff on site to get food and that sort of stuff. There are some exceptions. I haven't been on the maternity ward, so I don't know what they're doing at the moment. I'm sure all your watchers will have a much better idea of exactly how they're managing the current situation. They will try their best. You know, the midwives are generally a really good group. The obstetrics team are a really good group for valuing family contact and understand the importance of it. So they will be trying their best to give you as many sort of leeway as they can in the current situation. So, as I say, you know, and if you have got questions about it, I would just ask. I'm sure they're willing to kind of, you know, help out as much as they possibly can. I really would encourage that, just for anybody working in the NHS in the moment, but particularly obstetrics. And they're so aware of the current situation, and they all want to do their best to kind of alleviate anything they can. So, yeah.
Okay, so you've had your baby, and you've taken it home. How did you guys find adapting to life with a newborn? Jonny.
Wow, what a big question.
It is a big question.
It was tough. It was weirdly, I think you blank it out of your mind once it's over. But yeah, it was just sleep deprived, very nerve-wracking. It's very brittle and small, and yes, very easy breakable.
My mum just saying hi.
Hi, Claire's mum. But you get through it.
I mean, I have a very vivid memory on the first night of getting Izzy home, and we'd stayed in hospital for an extra night as well. So we'd stayed there and tried to get ourselves all sorted. And well, actually, breastfeeding was the major issue in the first few days.
Yeah.
And they had said, you know, they'd done all this stuff about effectively, oh, if the latch is fine, it shouldn't hurt. And my wife was saying it was painful, and our daughter was getting upset, and so we weren't convinced she was getting any milk in. Not only this was getting really stressful, sort of now at 12 hours at home, it was all kind of getting a bit terrifying. And so we got some that she'd pre-expressed in the freezer in little syringes. And I remember being up at about 3 o'clock in the morning with this screaming tiny person trying desperately to syringe milk into her mouth. And her sort of gagging on it and crying at the same time. And I just remember this absolute sense of panic of, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, and you have no real choice, you know. I mean, the choice is, there's this kind of, the choice is you do it or you end up, or you give your child to, you know, away. And that's not the choice, but that's how I viewed it at the time. And I was totally and utterly just completely terrified by this whole situation. And I remember just like basically relentlessly calling my mum to come round. She's a very old school kind of lady with lots of old school ideas of pregnancy, but at that time I just needed someone to tell me what to do. And yeah, I think it's more terrifying than anything because of the fact that you can't feel as though you can fail, but sometimes it's really, even the most basic of things is virtually impossible.
It's really hard. And I've got to be honest, when we brought the daughter on the first night, we'd had an extra night in hospital. We'd had a lot of support with breastfeeding, because one of the things that was difficult to work out is, if you've never done it before, breastfeeding is a bit of a bloody nightmare. It's hard work. It's not straightforward, and you can be shown 30 or 40 different techniques, and sometimes it's really difficult to find one that works for you. And we struggled a lot with breastfeeding right at the start. I say we. I struggled supporting my wife while she tried to breastfeed. I think it's probably the best way of putting it. And we stayed an extra night in the hospital to help with that. So there's always that worry about making sure you've got enough food into the child. And it does hurt. I think that's one of the things that's true. Even if you're doing it right, it's not a painless process. It can be painful. And actually, a lot of things you get told aren't the whole truth of these things.
No.
And the first night, I remember the first night after we left the hospital and we came home, and she was sleeping in the next to me crib. And
it wasn't in the next week. We didn't have
still,
it.
no, she was in the cot. Yeah, in the cot. Sorry, it was in the cot.
Yeah.
And she still had a bit of fluid from the birth, so she was making all these horrible, like, snory, choky sort of noises as she was sleeping through the night. And it's just me and my wife there, afraid to go to sleep in case something goes wrong. You know what I mean? And they're incredibly. I mean, the thing is to remember is they're more robust than you think they are.
The breathing is terrifying, though, isn't it? I mean,
It's absolutely terrifying.
It's just
It's like, oh my
I mean,
God,
like, how
something's
can any
wrong.
creature survive when breathing
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
You
go, what's going on?
Weird, breathing
just,
what are you doing?
Just breathe regularly. Breathe regularly.
Go to sleep. And they just never did it. And it's
hold it. Can't hold it. And I remember actually before we went and had the birth, like, my mum and dad had offered to come down and support us and come and stay. And the day after the baby was born, we rang them up and said, yes, please come as soon as possible. Can you come tomorrow and come and join us and give us that bit of support? And I'd say, if you've got parents out there that are willing to come and help you right at the start, use them. Don't be proud. Use them. It's really, really nice. Even if it's just somebody that's going to come in and make a cup of tea and perhaps, change your baby or two or whatever the hell like that at the start, just that extra bit of support is phenomenal.
But that again is going to be really hard under the circumstances, because we are.
Oh, yeah, no, true.
So I know that's one of the things that a lot of people are finding hard. It's really, I can't imagine. I mean, you'll get through it. And
do you reckon you could, like, Zoom share their sleep with your parents? It's like every time you wake up and freak out and they go, it's fine, just go back to sleep.
3 o'clock in the morning Zooms. Have your any parents or friends or guardians on standby. Jonny, how did you guys find it? Because I know with Archie, Kate struggled quite a lot, didn't she, with feeding? Sort of, how did you?
So yeah, it was tough. So we had a lot of time with a feeding consultant, or what do they call them? Feeding specialist. It wasn't really working. Yeah, a lady with lots of pumping machines. Anyway, in the end, once he had a bottle, he didn't really look back. To me, it was more of a relief, because it was quite stressful, because he got a bit jaundiced. He wasn't gaining weight or anything, or losing weight even. So I was quite happy for him to go into the bottle. But I know that Kate really struggled with, feeling like a failure almost. But to me, I was like, I really couldn't care less. Let's just crack on. Yeah, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I know it's supposed to be better for them to be breastfed, but if they're getting some food in them, does it matter how?
I think it's one of those things that a lot of women sort of go into, definitely thinking, I want to do this. And I know look, because Laura had some issues, didn't she, Tim, as well? Like, she took to it faster than I did. I mean, I struggled for, was it about 8 weeks, really, wasn't it, really?
It was lots of weeks. It was lots, and we went to quite a lot of breastfeeding cafes. We went into, I forget what's the maternity unit out Wallingford. We went there to get advice. Yeah. We stayed an extra night in the hospital to get some advice. We really did try and get the infant feeding team and get as much information as we could.
In a way, though, I think some of that information was not hugely helpful. I don't know, there was a load of stuff about sort of, you got a lot of very, very conflicting kind of messages. And in a way, that was one of the, I suppose, the important things for a partner to go through again, is to kind of understand the sheer weight, number of conflicting messages and stuff that comes out, so that actually your wife isn't, or partner is not just feeling totally bewildered and has no idea what's going on. It's both of you that's feeling like that. But we got all the stuff sort of, you have various kind of, you get given idealized timetables. A feed is going to last 15 minutes or whatever, and then the baby's going to be full and go to sleep, and it's not going to be painful, it's all going to work. And then we get home and sort of, our daughter then having cluster feeding for 6 hours at night and then still not being full, and you had when you actually got into the reality of it, the baby was so different from what the textbook advice ever suggested. And actually,
you just do what works for you, don't you?
Lots of experts don't necessarily have straightforward advice for you. It was really important, I think, for both of us to kind of go through and realise that it wasn't, just so that neither of us were really, Laura didn't blame herself, because I had no idea what was going on or how to help it either, and that was fine.
Actually, when Archie, we accepted that he was going to have bottles only, it was a lot less stressful. And he suddenly started sleeping a lot more, and our lives got a lot easier. So, yeah.
Because Kate really
just accepted it.
I can remember it was definitely, obviously we're not going to get into a kind of feeding debate on this, because,
Yeah, she took it personally. And, yeah, I was just trying to say, look, we're not in the Stone Ages. There's plenty of other options.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. We tried.
I think that's the important thing as well, isn't it? Like talking your partner down, because I can remember sometimes when I would just be crying and Rich would just be there, sort of, because I can remember sometimes like, well, look, we can always give it up, and I'd be there going, I'm not giving it up, and you'd be going, okay, but this has to be what you want to do. And how did you find that, Rich?
There were things which we did which you felt like a failure. Like, I remember we took a break because you were so sore on the nipples, and we basically took some express milk and fed them from a bottle. And you felt like a failure because you couldn't breastfeed, but at the end of the day you were producing the milk that your child was eating, and that was something that you could have been proud of. But there's so much stigma on this for how it should be done and how people should conform to a certain approach on this, that I think it applies a lot of pressure that cannot be good for the woman. Sorry, the partner. I apologise. The partner in these processes. So I think that's important to remember, that there is a lot of pressure on this.
There's so much stigma on loads and loads of stuff, and so much. I mean, by the end of it, you kind of actually realise that it doesn't all make it doesn't really make sense, and everybody has conflicting views, and there isn't actually much evidence for any of it. I mean, being a bit scientific, I read a load of blogs and stuff about the sort of actual evidence of a lot of these sort of the parenting kind of aspects and stuff, and there isn't. People have these incredibly strongly held opinions about what should and shouldn't be done, and actually when you dig into it, there is a lot of things which are not hugely evidence based, particularly like with the sort of with some of the stuff around breastfeeding, about how you should be doing certain times of breastfeeding, or how you should be, how long they should be sleeping for, what their daytime pattern should be. You get this ridiculously perfect timetable of what a baby should be doing, and they will never conform to it, and it's all just not. It's idealized babies for books.
To be honest, there may be one child that does conform to it, but it will not be yours.
Yeah, it won't be yours.
It won't be yours.
Child. I don't even think
it'll be your friend's baby. Your friend's baby will be the perfect child. But yeah, I think the other thing. I mean, the kind of the three basic rules that I kind of came up with for like children, babies, and things like that is love them, feed them, don't drop them. And I think if you stick to those kind of like three basic rules, you're probably going to be all right.
Yeah, that we did use that. I can remember that. Now,
sometimes they drop though, don't they?
Don't drop them. That's the one thing we can all agree on.
How about sort of night feeds and stuff like that? Did you guys kind of help, or night wake ups? Did you guys support you, like even when you went back to work? Because that's my next question, is the whole going back to work thing, which was quite a big thing for you know, sort of, and leaving your partner on their own with the baby. Like, did you guys help with nights? And
where I could, to be honest, not always. And then there's a certain element of a division of labour to a certain extent, and I think you did more of the nights while I was doing, you know, the days and things like that. But I would try and do at least a few of the nights, and certainly I would do the nights at the weekend. So yeah, I think it's hard. I think it's really hard to find the right balance on that, to be honest. And it depends on how you as a team suffer with sleep deprivation. So
I definitely got better at sleeping through crying, if I'm honest. Oh, I didn't hear. Really?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm guessing because Archie as well was bottle fed. That's sort of easier to help with night feeds, isn't it? Because that's a difficult one when you breastfeed, is, you know, you are.
I think getting into a good routine quickly meant that he dropped the night feed quite quickly.
Okay.
He still woke up, but we were very lucky in that after a few months he was very routine led, whereas I know other guys were just all over the place. So we probably had it a bit easier, to be fair.
That doesn't
we used to have a
it doesn't always go with them. It's just the child, I think. Like the child likes, you know. Sorry, Rich.
We were getting 8 hours sleep after about 6 months, so.
Kind of hate.
I don't want to hear the story anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. Jonny, keep the story to yourself.
It's all right. I've gone the other way. I've trained myself that I need about 5.5 hours in a night now, and that's fine. And like that's a good night. So it's like, yeah.
Right.
I'm quite pleased with this. I've got an extra 2.5 hours a day. Admittedly, they you know, maybe that it's like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, so I get those hours. But you know, it's I think it's good.
How did you all find going back to work? How did that feel?
Yeah, it was a bit of a break, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Sometimes it was a break. Really, you got away from the baby for a while.
Bit of normality, you know.
We had the easier end of the deal, I think, but at the same point, I don't think I didn't really get a break at work. It was more, as I say, it wasn't as hard as at home, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
I probably still feel like it's that at the moment in a way. I still think being at home and trying to entertain a toddler during lockdown is harder than my current job.
I can remember the first time I had the baby for an extended period of time on my own. I just thought I could not do this. I couldn't be the mum. That was difficult.
How long did you have him for the first time?
I can't remember now. I think it's probably only 4 hours or something, but just that feeling of, oh my God, it's just me. What do I do? It was a bit of an eye-opener.
There is a bit of entertaining. God, sorry, Tim.
I remember taking Izzy for like 3 hours or something, so Laura could when she was not that old, but maybe just over a month or like 6 weeks. Taking her for like 3 hours so that Laura could go to a spa. And literally at the end of it, just all kind of hell broke loose because I clearly kept it together for just long enough. But then basically, Laura comes out of the spa. First thing she does is poo all over her dress. She's then inconsolably upset. So we end up heading to minor injuries to basically have our baby assessed. Where it turns out they were like, oh, she's fine. She's maybe just got a bit of a cold. The total chaos. I was in tears outside minor injuries. This was 3 hours. 3 hours that were covered in shit at minor injuries. In absolute panic. And that's like, yeah, I'm glad I'm not the one running this.
There is definitely an element of like entertaining a baby where like, or even a young child where it's really easy to entertain them for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes of that bit where you look at the baby looks at you. It's like, well, I don't know what to do. What's your idea? And the baby's like, you're the adult. It's your problem. Entertain me. It's like, That's like quite.
That's where Peppa Pig comes in.
It needs to be a bit older for Peppa Pig. That takes a little while. We had bouncing like on the gym balls, you know, the ones they use in pregnant. I can't remember what they're called. We just used to sit and bounce on that for like hours and hours and hours on end. I got like thighs of like I don't know, like like Thundercat thighs. It's amazing.
And did you guys used to sort of, because I can remember when Rich used to come home, I just literally used to be like, here's a child, have this child, I'm going to go and do something not that child for a while. Like, how did you find, did you resent that? Did you feel like, oh God, I need to wind down? Or, you know, how did you kind of?
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah. You have a
there was the occasional time I'd sit in the car for 10 minutes on the drive before I'd come in, so.
Yeah, actually, if you advocate, I mean, I know that it's probably not PC to advocate for shows on things, but if you have Netflix, the show The Letdown does quite a good description of a lot of this stuff, which is very miserable. And yeah, hiding in the car, or you know, just staying at work to do that little bit of extra piece of work that probably doesn't need to be done today, became a little bit of a thing when you're really tired.
Just when you do look after them for an extended period of time, and then you understand that it's mentally very tiring as well as physically, and you don't really appreciate that initially.
To be fair, I think Laura did get her own back on occasions though. So you know, she'd go off various bits and pieces, and then it'd be like, you know, oh, I'm just going off to the shops. And it'd be like 3 hours later, you'd be like, what's going on? You know, just sort of. And you had to kind of shut up because you know, as a guy, you're on the much easier end of the deal, or the partner, you're on the much easier end of the whole deal. So it's yeah. But yeah, there was a persistent fight, and there is. Even now, there is the odd sort of little fight about who's had more free time.
Yeah, that is never winning argument, to be honest. And there is that like, but I got up with her 3 times. Like, well, I got up with her 4 times. It's your turn to do breakfast.
All these things creep in, don't they? It's like we never
bargaining.
We never had that before, and now it's the thing. And it's I'm interested in what it's going to be like for both of you when you have your second, actually, because I think your free time is going to probably go down to about 15 minutes a day or something, isn't it, to split between you?
If that.
I think so.
It's okay once they're all into a regular sleep routine, so we're looking at maybe 2 years, and then we'll have free time again.
Unless you have a third one.
No.
No. Definitely not. No, my wife has made it very clear that this is the last pregnancy that's ever going to occur.
I mean, that is something that I would have to say, like, it has been quite interesting being pregnant with the second during lockdown. It's been how I had sort of assumed that I would have time and space, you know, when Artemis would be at the childminder, and once I was on maternity leave, I would have that time that I could have to relax. And of course, I haven't had that. I've had a toddler full-time, took early maternity leave. I mean, you know, actually, you know, Rich and Jonny, I just sort of like to ask you, like, how have you been, because obviously Kate's still at work, Jonny, I know. How have you been have you found supporting us through that? Have you got any advice for any sort of second time dads or sort of partners, or any kind of advice that could be used for the first, that you'd say, oh, looking back, actually, you know, I could have supported my partner in X way? Got any advice for them?
I guess for my job's different because I can sort of do it at different hours of the day. So I'm sort of looking after Archie and working in the daytime, and I am doing a lot of the home stuff. Actually, it's fine. I'm quite enjoying being more of a hands-on dad now. I probably had better quality time with Archie I wouldn't have had. So I've actually really enjoyed it. Definitely more organised. Just, yeah, I don't know. I think you're more conditioned as a parent once you've had one. Your expectations are set appropriately. I think your relationship moves on. It's a weird situation. I think it's quite unique. I'm probably in a more unique position in that I'm actually quite enjoying it in a way, even though some things are really frustrating. But I'm quite enjoying having the time with Archie, which I wouldn't have had.
I like your appropriate expectation setting. I like that phrase. It's a good phrase.
Having a bottle of wine in the fridge sometimes as well helps, but that's life, isn't it?
Kate, well, I'm sure she loves watching you drink that extra bottle of wine. That is the thing that I miss the most, I must admit, is when I watch Rich have a nice beer and I just think, why are you drinking? You should be teetotal. I've told him.
Drinking for two, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Drinking for three now.
I mean, Rich, you've given me lots of, and I know because I'm, for anyone who doesn't know, I am friends with Jonny's partner, so, and Tim's partner as well. So I know you've been giving her lots of breaks and lots of rest. So, you know, I mean, I would say that's a really good thing to say to any of those future, you know, dads or future mums to be.
It's a weird situation we're in at the moment with coronavirus. As it is, I'm working from home, so that means that I can get up during a quiet point of the day and take the kid for half an hour here or there and put in extra work later if I need to. So in some ways, the coronavirus has actually been helpful, just in terms of flexibility and being able to be there to help during the day. And of course, we've done what we can really with that, and where I can help. So I don't know. I mean, in some ways, it's been a bonus being at working from home at this stage. And if I was still going out to work every day, well, I suppose we'd have access to the childminder and things like that. You'd have support in a different manner. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to see the positive in every situation.
Yeah.
So what else was I going to add in, actually? Let me just have a quick look. I think that's it, really. Is there anything that you guys, maybe we could have a paragraph from each of you on your advice to any brand new dads or mums to be out there supporting their partner through pregnancy at whatever stage. So Tim, if we could start with you, what is your golden nugget of advice?
I think for me the major thing was you know, it's going to kind of sound really cliched actually. It's the old, you know, actually it's only actually quite a short time and you don't get many goes at it, and actually it is kind of, when you look back at it, it's a very memory forming time, and it has got lots of bits which are amazing and fun. Do try and kind of take those bits on board, like the kind of amazing thing when you first like show your baby a book and stuff like that, and they get really, you know, kind of you notice them actually really starting to enjoy it, things like that. It's try and take what you can, because those moments are actually really amazing and special, and it's far too easy to get bogged down in horror stories. But yeah, so that's my key bit of advice.
Jonny?
When I was getting a bit overwhelmed, I'd always think people have been doing this for millennia. It's the most natural thing, so don't worry about it. And that worked for me. And like Tim says, there's been lots of really nice moments, and watching them sort of grow into little people has been really cool. So enjoy it.
And Rich?
So I guess I have a couple of things. First thing is, your life will never be the same ever again. Okay, it has changed. This little creature has entered into your world, and your life has been completely upheavaled. And whatever you thought your life was going to be with a child, it's something you're not going to expect until it happens. And I think actually, I think it's okay to grieve your old life, but also to recognize that this new life is also extremely special and is something that's unique. And you are the only person that is ever going to raise this child. And this child is a completely and utter unique individual. And you'll find this when you talk to all the other people around you with kids and how they all behave in different ways. And everyone is unique. So this is, in some respects, this is a magical moment that you are going to get this one unique experience that no one else is ever going to understand and is ever going to live through, that you're living through with your wife and your child. But have a beer, have a good cry, grieve your old life, and accept that your new life is going to be different, all right?
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck with everything, Jonny. We'll stay in touch, and thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing, Tim, as well, because I know you're working really, really hard at the moment in keeping Oxfordshire going. So thank you.
Cheers, guys.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Bye.